My wife took half my business and claimed I'd go bankrupt without her. Now she's broke and begging back. But what I said in court ended everything. I'm 37, male, and built my landscape architecture and garden design business from literally nothing but dirt and stubborn persistence. 12 years ago, I was just a guy with a second-hand wheelbarrow, some basic tools from yard sales, and an absolutely unreasonable amount of determination. My journey started in my parents' backyard, where my uncle, I'll call him Marcus, a respected garden designer who'd worked on some pretty impressive estates, took pity on me after I graduated with a degree in horticulture and landscape design during the housing market crash. Not exactly prime time for luxury garden installations, he said, but he saw something in me that I didn't even see myself. Gardens don't mind waiting, he'd say while showing me how to trim Japanese maples without messing them up. They've got all the time in the world for the economy to bounce back. The guy could turn a patch of dead dirt into something straight out of house and garden. I was nowhere close to that when I first started, but I made up for it by throwing in the hours and breaking a sweat. My first office was a corner of my parents' garage, where I drew designs on an old drafting table Uncle Marcus gave me. My first clients were neighbors who felt sorry for me, then friends of those neighbors who actually liked my work. I charged barely enough to cover materials and ramen noodles. For 3 years, I reinvested every penny back into better tools, reference books, and eventually a used truck with my logo hand-painted on the side, badly, I might add. By year 5, I had managed to rent a tiny workspace above a garden supply store and hire one part-time helper. I was making enough to move out of my parents' place into a modest apartment, nothing fancy but mine. My designs were getting more recognition locally, and I had a small but loyal client base who appreciated my style, natural, sustainable gardens that looked like they had always belonged there, not like they'd been imposed on the landscape. That's when I met my wife, Olivia. I managed to scrape together just enough cash to rent the smallest, most forgotten booth in the far back corner of a local home and garden show, printed my portfolio pictures at the neighborhood coffee shop, slapped them on some boards with pushpins, and hoped for the best. Compared to the polished, big-name landscape companies around me, my setup looked like a school project. Olivia showed up during one of the quiet lulls, actually taking her time to check out my designs, which was rare that day. She stood out right away, tall, sharp bob haircut, that kind of put-together look that says, I know exactly what I'm doing. While most people walking by were couples daydreaming about perfect lawns and backyard patios, she rolled in solo, rocking this low-key expensive outfit and carrying a leather portfolio like she meant business. Your designs have something the others don't, she said, pointing to my drawing of a woodland meditation garden. They have soul. We got to talking. She was 35, had a background in architectural visualization, basically making those fire 3D renderings that make clients throw money at you before you've even planted a single seed. She'd been working for a high-end architectural firm, but was feeling constrained by corporate politics and the endless designing of beige boxes for beige people, as she put it. Our conversation stretched from a quick booth chat to coffee after the show closed, to dinner that ran so late the restaurant staff started wiping down nearby tables. She was sharp, ambitious, and had this vision of combining traditional landscape design with cutting-edge visualization technology. By the end of the evening, we were sketching ideas on napkins, me with garden layouts, her with how they could be rendered in 3D to help clients really see the potential. You know what your business needs? She said, eyes bright with possibility. Someone to help clients visualize your creativity. Your designs deserve to be seen the way you imagine them. 2 weeks later, we were collaborating on a proposal for a client I never would have had the confidence to approach on my own. 6 months later, we were dating. A year after that, she moved her visualization equipment into my small studio, and we officially became business partners. When we married 7 years ago, I thought we'd grow together perfectly. Her digital skills and my horticultural knowledge seemed like the ideal combination. Beauty, both virtual and real. The first 5 years actually bloomed quite beautifully. Olivia transformed my operation from a guy with a good eye for plants to a boutique landscape design firm. She created stunning virtual tours of my garden concepts that clients could walk through before a single hole was dug. She took my hand-drawn designs and turned them into immersive experiences. Our website, which replaced my sad little Vistaprint template, won a local design award. She set up professional social media accounts that showcased our projects from concept to completion. By year 3 of our marriage, Green Vision's landscape design became known in our region for innovative outdoor spaces that blended classic garden design with modern sensibilities. With her encouragement, I took risks I never would have attempted alone. A Japanese-inspired dry garden with custom stonework, a rooftop ecosystem for a downtown restaurant, a therapeutic garden for a children's hospital that incorporated sensory elements for kids with different abilities. My designs became more ambitious, and with her visualizations helping clients understand the vision, our close rate on proposals went from about 40% to nearly 80%. The business grew enough that we could finally open a real studio downtown. Nothing fancy, but a legitimate storefront with our name on it, not just a rented room above a shop. We hired 2 talented designers, a guy named Marcus, named after my uncle, which seemed like a good omen, and Elena, both recent graduates with impressive portfolios but not enough experience to get hired by the big firms. I recognized in them what my uncle had seen in me, raw talent that needed guidance. For a while, everything seemed perfect. I handled the actual design and landscaping work. She handled the visualization technology and client presentations. I could focus on what I loved, creating beautiful spaces, while she managed the aspects of the business that made me break out in hives, marketing, client acquisition, contracts. I trusted her completely with the digital side I barely understood. We bought a small house with a large yard that I turned into a living portfolio of sustainable garden design. We weren't wealthy by any means, but comfortable enough to occasionally take vacations, invest in quality tools, and not panic when a client was late paying an invoice. I remember thinking during our 5th anniversary dinner at this little bistro with a garden patio I'd helped design, this is it. This is what success feels like. I had no idea I was actually admiring the view from the peak, with a rocky decline just ahead. The climate changed so gradually I almost didn't notice, like the way leaves turn yellow before anyone acknowledges autumn has arrived. It started with small comments about our studio. What once had been described as charmingly authentic became cramped and limited. Olivia began comparing our income to her former colleagues who had stayed in corporate architecture and design, with their downtown offices, glass towers, and annual bonuses. Jessica just got promoted to visualization director, she said, all casual one night, scrolling through her phone while I was knee-deep in a design at the dining table. They're flying her to Tokyo to present their new VR platform. Cool, must be nice. That kind of comment started popping up more often. Suddenly, our stable income was barely middle class, like we were one Amazon order away from financial ruin. The local business I built from scratch? Now just a big fish in a puddle, because, I guess, if it's not global, it doesn't count. And the designs she used to brag about, the ones she once called soulful and one of a kind. Yeah, now they're nice but not really scalable. Translation, cute hobby, babe. Then came the more direct hits. How her visualization skills could easily earn 6 figures if she wasn't stuck rendering garden gnome habitats. Oh, how delightful. I was working my butt off, taking on commissions that stretched my creativity and physical endurance just to increase our profit margins. But nothing flourished enough to satisfy her. The woman who once admired my passion now called it playing with plants, like I was a child with a garden box. That kind of dismissal plants deep roots when it comes from the person who vowed to support you. I tried to address it one night after a particularly cutting remark about how our business model was quaint but ultimately limited. I thought you loved what we built together, I said, genuinely confused by this transformation. You used to talk about how fulfilling it was to create spaces that bring people joy. She sighed, with this new weariness that had become her default expression around me. I did love it, Nathan, but I'm 40 now. Is this really all you want? A little studio designing gardens for suburban housewives and local restaurants? Don't you want to grow beyond this sandbox? That hit me harder than I let on because it wasn't just criticism, it was erasure. She wasn't talking about a business anymore. She was talking about the thing that made me a man. I didn't build Green Visions as a hobby or a cute side project. It was my legacy, in soil and sweat. Every square foot of garden, every stone path, every late night sketching layouts with dirt under my fingernails, that was me. She didn't just walk out on me, she tried to erase the thing that made me who I am. Our clients love our work, I countered. We're making a good living doing something that matters. We're making an adequate living, she corrected. And yes, Mrs. Henderson loved her butterfly garden. But where's the impact? Where's the growth potential? Where's our exit strategy? Exit strategy? I echoed, baffled. This isn't a startup we're trying to sell. This is our life's work. She just looked at me with something between pity and frustration. That's exactly the problem. I should have seen it then, the fundamental disconnect. I had built a business to sustain a lifetime of creative work. She had seen it as a stepping stone to something bigger. I was literally cultivating a garden. She was looking for a harvest. The first clear shift in the air hit about 6 years into our marriage when we secured our biggest client yet, a major player in real estate development. They were behind a massive new project downtown, high-end condos, stylish retail spots, and sleek office space. What set it apart? They wanted standout landscaping to give the whole thing a unique edge. This was a legitimately exciting opportunity. The budget was generous, the creative brief open-ended, and the potential for visibility enormous. I spent weeks developing concepts, researching sustainable urban landscaping, and sketching ideas for rooftop gardens, courtyard spaces, and living walls. Olivia was more energized than I'd seen her in months. She created stunning visualizations, even learning new software to better render the extensive project. We were collaborating like we used to. Me with the garden knowledge, her with the technical skills. Both of us excited by the possibilities. But then the vibe shifted. She started saying she should handle all the meetings on her own. He tunes in more when I talk about the technical stuff. Or these guys don't care about plant details, they just want to see the big picture. Her meetings with him started running later and later. She'd come home all hyped up, throwing around words like vision, scale, and bigger opportunities. But when I asked for actual details to work into the designs, she'd just brush it off like, we're still figuring out the big picture. I tried ignoring the shadow growing over our relationship, focusing instead on making this project perfect. Then one evening, I overheard her on the phone in her home office, door slightly ajar. I happened to walk by and caught her mid-call. "I've been thinking about your offer," she said, totally unaware I was there. "It's tempting, just complicated with my current situation." Then this laugh, light, flirty, like the kind I hadn't heard from her in forever. "Yeah, I get the timing," she went on. "Opportunities like this don't wait. No, he has no idea. I just need a little time to sort things out." That was the moment something clicked. Later that night, while digging through our home office looking for a tax document, I stumbled on something she clearly didn't want me to find, a separate bank account. Not technically illegal since we were in a community property state, but sketchy as hell considering it had almost $25,000 in it. When I asked her about it, she didn't even blink. No guilt, no scrambling, just looked at me like I was a clueless intern and casually called it her contingency fund. I asked, contingency for what? She hit me with, for when your cute little garden business crashes and burns. Let's be real, those mom and pop setups don't last these days. Straight face, no hesitation. I was stunned. My business? I thought it was our business. She sighed, closing her laptop as if this conversation was cutting into her productive time. "Nathan, be realistic. I know that business is your passion project that I've helped make viable, but it's not a long-term growth opportunity. It's not scalable beyond a certain point." I paused for a second. "So what was all that talk with Clayton about?" I asked. "What offer were you discussing?" Her face changed then, a flicker of something she couldn't cover fast enough. Guilt, irritation, fear. Hard to tell, but it was there. "He's impressed with my work," she said. "He thinks I could do more than just gardens." I locked eyes with her. "You're not just planning to leave the business." She didn't respond. I kept going. "You're sleeping with him." This time the silence was confirmation. No shock, no denial, just that same blank expression, like I was inconveniencing her with facts. I stood there for a moment taking it in. Not the betrayal. I'd already accepted that. What burned was how smug she was about it, like she'd already moved on and left me waiting for an ending she wrote without telling me. I exhaled, then I said it plain. "This marriage, it's over. And as for the business, I'll rebuild it without the dead weight." I didn't yell, I didn't ask why, I didn't make a scene. I walked out. Because when someone shows you what they are, you don't argue. You just stop standing in their shade. I slept in my workshop that night, surrounded by design sketches and plant samples. 2 days later, she informed me she wanted a divorce. No attempt to salvage things, no suggestion of counseling, just done. Said she'd outgrown small-scale thinking and needed to pursue opportunities aligned with her ambitions. I was completely uprooted and thoroughly withered. It wasn't until later, thanks to some industry chatter, that the full picture came together. Turns out, the client wasn't just into our landscaping ideas. He was setting up a whole new division focused on environmental design and visualization. Way bigger stage, way bigger spotlight. And guess who got offered a top spot in it? Yeah. Suddenly everything made a lot more sense. And then came the truly toxic part. Since she'd been developing the visualization aspects for years, her lawyer argued she was entitled to half, not just half our personal assets, but half my business, the thing I had planted and nurtured before she ever came along. The settlement talks were just brutal. Her lawyer came in swinging with these flashy portfolios, trying to paint her as the genius who magically turned my landscaping gig into a real business, like I hadn't been doing this way before she ever showed up. Apparently all the years I spent building, it meant about as much as last year's weeds. Ms. Riley's technological innovations and marketing acumen increased Green Vision's revenue by 327% over a 6-year period, her lawyer argued during one particularly brutal session. The company, as it exists today, is fundamentally different from Mr. Parker's original landscaping service, largely due to my client's contributions. The designs are still mine, I pointed out. The client relationships are mine. The knowledge of plants and landscaping is mine. And yet her lawyer said, with the charm of a fake plant, without her visual stuff, your designs would still be doodles on graph paper. The business model, the way you get clients, the tech side, all her doing. My lawyer tried his best, but he was a general practice attorney who normally handled wills and real estate transactions, outmatched by her lawyer's corporate precision. I couldn't afford a high-powered divorce attorney on my modest business owner's income. The judge totally bought into their performance. When I got the settlement terms, I swear I could feel my soul leave the room. She walked away with the house, half my savings, and, get this, 50% of my business. Yeah, the business I built from the ground up while she was still figuring out what a trellis was. I was devastated but had to keep it all together. The final insult came when we sat down to sign the papers. She gave me that smug little smirk and said, "You'll be bankrupt in a year without my tech skills. No one wants your cute hand-drawn garden doodles anymore." Her lawyer even laughed, like they'd already picked out my bankruptcy court date. I just smiled, nodded, and let them think I was done. A washed-up plant wilting in the corner. Was I crushed? Absolutely. For about 3 days, I was seriously ready to ghost the whole industry, pack up, move to the middle of nowhere, stock shelves at a garden center, and forget this dream ever existed. But then I remembered something my uncle once told me back when a nasty drought wiped out half our nursery. Gardeners and gardens don't die easy. We're built to bounce back. Game on. While she was out celebrating with a new lease and a $5,000 espresso machine, I was hauling pavers in the rain to meet a deadline. No interns, no tech crew, just me and a wheelbarrow on a sloped property where the mud came up to my ankles. That was my healing process. Call it therapy with blisters. I didn't have time to feel sorry for myself. I had retaining walls to finish and clients to not let down. But what Olivia had forgotten was that while she knew visualization, I knew creation. And I knew my clients, not as digital models, but as actual people, people who commissioned outdoor spaces for marriages, milestone celebrations, and peaceful retreats, who wanted connection to nature, not just a pretty rendering. The day after signing, I withdrew my share of money from our business account after consulting with my lawyer to ensure I was only taking what was legally mine as 50% owner, no underhanded maneuvers. I then called Marcus and Elena, the two designers I'd mentored for years. We met at a coffee shop well away from our usual haunts, and I laid out the situation with complete honesty. "I'm starting over," I told them. "New company, new location, same design philosophy. I can't offer you the same salary right away. It'll be tight for a while, but you'll have more creative input, and when we're stable, you'll get profit sharing." I expected hesitation, maybe polite excuses. Instead, Elena simply asked, "When do we start?" And Marcus nodded his agreement. They didn't hesitate for a moment. "What about the non-compete clauses in our contracts?" Marcus asked, always the practical one. "Those are with Green Visions, which is now half-owned by someone who has no interest in actually running it," I pointed out. "And they only apply to starting a competing business, not joining one." Next, I called our landlord about the studio lease, explaining the divorce situation. He was surprisingly understanding. Turns out his sister had gone through something similar. He agreed to let me out of the lease early in exchange for helping redesign his home garden for free. That night, she blew up my phone non-stop. "What happened to the business account? Where are the design files? What about our clients?" I didn't answer a thing, just watched the texts stack up like a yard full of dead leaves. Let her panic. The next morning, I filed the paperwork for a brand new LLC, Marcus Legacy Gardens, named after my uncle, the guy who taught me everything I know. I moved into a smaller converted carriage house across town. Rent's cheaper, space is cozier, and it has actual character. Used my own gear as collateral for a small business loan and got rolling. Now, here's the fun part. The old business still technically existed. She still owned half of it on paper, but the studio, empty. Staff, gone. Website, crickets. Clients, all moved over because those relationships were built on my name. So, yeah, she owned 50% of a ghost town. Within a week, I was personally on the phone with every client we had projects lined up with. Told them we were going through a business restructuring, but I'd still take care of everything under my new venture. Honestly, I expected at least a few to back out or try to renegotiate. Nope. Not a single one bailed. In fact, most were way more supportive than I expected. I dropped a vague mention about marital complications, and suddenly I was hearing their own messy divorce stories. One client, Mrs. Abernathy, absolute legend, said, "I always thought she was too slick for this work. Gardens aren't supposed to be slick. Been grinding non-stop for 6 months now, sun up to starlight. The new studio's smaller, sure, but so is the overhead. And I actually run the show." Marcus and Elena came with me, even agreed to take a temporary pay cut in exchange for future profit sharing. Loyalty like that? You can't buy it. And without all the expensive tech she insisted we needed, our costs tanked, in a good way. We went back to basics, hand-drawn designs with simple digital renderings. Elena picked up some of the tech skills along the way and makes it work on budget-friendly software. Surprisingly, the clients were really into the change. A bunch of them even said the hand-drawn stuff felt more genuine, like it actually meant something to them. One guy nailed it when I apologized for not using the usual high-tech visuals. He just said it felt more personal. Revenue dropped a little at first, not shocking, but so did the expenses, so it kind of balanced out. And honestly, without all the pressure to scale or chase growth, I started remembering why I got into this in the first place, just building something real, something that actually lasts and makes a difference. No flashy tech, no corporate buzzwords, just dirt, roots, and real work. Then her lawyer called me. Apparently, Olivia is furious that her investment in our old business is yielding nothing but weeds. She's demanding I return the business assets and threatening legal action. I had my new lawyer, much more reasonable, specializes in small businesses, Explained that I hadn't violated the settlement. The old business still exists. She owns 50% of that empty shell. Nothing in our agreement prevented me from starting a new business or required me to remain employed by our joint company. Her lawyer called, sounding real panicked. Turns out she'd been banking on steady money from the business, like already moved into a fancy new apartment and leased herself some overpriced German car. Problem is, those profit checks she was counting on? Yeah, they never showed up. Just a whole lot of nothing. The most delicious irony? Some of our former clients have been contacting her, asking about landscape projects. She's been referring them to me because she has no alternative. I don't desire vengeance, I just want to create beautiful spaces and earn a living. But I won't deny feeling some satisfaction knowing that the business she dismissed as playing with plants is flourishing without her, while her contingency fund is likely approaching drought conditions. She didn't leave me alone. The other day she appeared at my new studio, unannounced, caught me in the middle of finalizing some designs. Thankfully, I didn't smudge the drawing when she startled me. She looked different, designer outfit as always, but the confident smirk had withered. Instead, she appeared stressed and desperate. She began with pleasantries, commenting on the new space, then quickly pivoted to, "We should discuss the business situation." I kept working while she talked. She actually suggested we team up again because we're such a great combo. Said it was a mistake to let personal stuff mess with business. I almost laughed out loud. This wasn't about missing the work we did together. Her fancy bag looked beat up, and that expensive jewelry she used to flash? Nowhere in sight. When I didn't jump at her offer, she switched gears and started picking apart my business. Said my website looked amateur. It was built by Elena's kid who's studying digital media, nothing flashy but it works. My social media? Inconsistent. Yeah, because I post when I'm not knee-deep in actual garden work. And apparently, my pricing lacks sophistication. It's just based on time, materials, and what makes sense for the people I work with, not some inflated profit-first formula. You need me, she insisted. This operation could generate triple the revenue with proper digital presence. I was going to roll on the ground, laughing. What she never quite grasped, bless her high-gloss faux minimalist soul, is that I didn't build this to impress, conference panels, or chase LinkedIn clout. I wasn't out here planting trees for applause. Every project with my name on it meant I made something real, not just optimized for engagement. This studio? Yeah, it's not housed in a glass tower with mood lighting and curated succulents, but it's got something those places never will, actual integrity. I didn't need her vision board mantras or designer buzzwords. I needed dirt, roots, and the kind of respect you don't get from a press release. And funny enough, that's exactly what made this place mine. I finally set down my pencil and met her gaze directly. Listen, I'm taking home more now than I did when we were married. Lower revenues, substantially lower expenses, higher profit. Her face performed an interesting contortion. That's impossible. Your studio is half the size. Rent is a third of what we were paying, I said. No expensive 3D rendering stations, no unnecessary technology upgrades every 6 months, no overpriced coffee machine for clients who rarely used it. Just a studio where people can see their gardens being designed by human hands. She was pissed, like practically vibrating. Called me small-minded, accused me of limiting my potential, which is wild coming from someone who thought every garden should include a QR code and artificial lighting for Instagram photos. Then Elena walks in with lunch, sees her, freezes for a second, then throws me a look. You want me to stay? I give the smallest headshake. Elena nods and glides out without saying a word, like a ninja with a salad. Olivia noticed. She definitely noticed. Her eyes flicked between me and the door Elena just went through. They both came with you? She asked, flat as ever. Yeah, Marcus and Elena. And most of the clients, too. She didn't say anything for a second, just kind of looked around the room, taking in the drawings pinned to the wall, the half-built model of a community garden on the work table, the whiteboard full of client updates, basically all the stuff that screamed, "We're doing just fine without you." You planned this? She finally asked. I didn't even flinch. I adapted. That's what real businesses do when they lose dead weight. That got under her skin. She stormed out, but not before dropping a dramatic, "This isn't over." Guess what showed up 3 days later? A letter from her lawyer, demanding financial statements, client lists, the works. The claim, Olivia believed my new company was generating derivative profits from the old one, and she wanted her fair share. Cute. My lawyer, absolute legend, fired off a beautifully worded reply that basically said, "That's a no from us, dog. New company, different name, different space, no obligation, no access." Meanwhile, I was quietly having the best month since I started working for myself. Projects were rolling in. Clients were referring friends. A local sculptor I'd started collaborating with had just landed us a shout-out in some artsy newsletter. We weren't building for rich developers anymore. We were building for actual people. People who cared about space, peace, connection, stuff that mattered. Then came a call I wasn't expecting, a client from way back, the rose garden lady who thought Olivia was too slick for dirt. Her son runs the city's botanical gardens, and they were redesigning the Japanese section. Guess who got name-dropped? This wasn't some fluff piece for my resume. It was the kind of project I'd been dreaming about. Real thought, real purpose, the kind of work that actually makes you feel something. I put together a simple proposal, hand-drawn sketches, thoughtful design, and a few renderings Elena whipped up on software that doesn't cost half a paycheck. We submitted it, and waited. Meanwhile, 2 corporate firms submitted these glossy, overproduced digital fantasy lands that looked like they were meant for video games, not public gardens. We won. The director called and said, "Your design looked like it came from someone who actually wanted to be in the garden." That stuck with me. But my ex wasn't done yet. She tried to sue me, because of course she did. About 3 months after the split, I got served. She was claiming I sabotaged our old company on purpose to screw her over. My lawyer just sighed, said, "This is desperation, not strategy." But still, it meant time, depositions, paperwork, and dealing with her again. During her lawyer's questioning, they asked if I had started planning my exit strategy once the divorce began. No, I said. I started planning my survival strategy. She made it clear the business was just an asset to divide. I had to protect my life's work. They tried to trip me up by bringing Marcus in to testify. Bad move. He calmly explained that he left because Olivia treated designers like machines and prioritized profit over quality. He respects the craft, he said, pointing at me. Then came Elena. She went off in her calm, no-nonsense voice about how Olivia kept pushing cookie-cutter designs just to keep things scalable. Nathan taught us to listen to the land and the people. Olivia wanted templates. And finally, the surprise witness, one of our clients, the one who called me. She showed up, despite arthritis and bad knees, with a photo album in hand and righteous fury in her voice. "This woman," she said, pointing to Olivia, "told me to rip out my rose garden and lay down artificial turf because it'd be easier at my age, as if I gardened for efficiency." Olivia's lawyer called for a recess. When they came back, they offered to drop the whole thing if I bought out her half of the old business for $75,000. I could have walked away bitter, could have played victim. But instead, I looked at what I had. A business with real values, a team that had my back, and the dignity of knowing I didn't fold when it got hard. She tried to strip me of everything. My work, my pride, my name. But respect, that's something you either earn or lose. And me? I never needed her validation. I just needed a shovel and some silence. So, my counter? $1,800. That's the fair market value for a company with no employees, no clients, and no soul. She took it. Oh, and Mr. Real Estate Visionary, the one she was giggling with behind closed doors and taking late meetings with? Turns out, the offer she was banking on never fully landed. Word around the industry is that he kept her on the hook with promises of a director role, strung her along for months, and when corporate didn't greenlight the new division, he ghosted faster than a contractor after a deposit clears. She'd burned her bridge with me, hitched her wagon to a paper tiger, and ended up unemployed in a city where her name didn't open doors anymore, because most people knew who built the real legacy. A week later, I'm at a bank when I run into her brother. We were never close, but he always seemed level-headed. He congratulated me, awkwardly, but said something I didn't expect. She's done this before. Took credit for other people's work since we were kids. Parents, teachers, group projects, you name it. Then he tells me she's moving to Boston, took some director job, told everyone it was a big step up, but she's also leaving because, well, the reputation. I nodded. I didn't ask, but he offered anyway, said the guy she ditched everything for lost interest once the new funding didn't come through. Classic story, she tried to ride a wave that wasn't hers and ended up underwater. Meanwhile, I'm getting asked to mentor students and speak at garden expos. Funny how that works. Then he added, "I saw your botanical gardens design. It's amazing, man. Didn't expect that, but it hit just right." And yeah, it's been about a year. We've got 6 employees now, 2 locations, and a lineup of real clients with real missions. We've even been featured in a couple of design magazines and podcasts, which, side note, I still don't know how I ended up on one, but whatever. And here I am dating again, someone who still hand draws plants, ironically, drinking coffee in my own backyard garden, watching a Japanese maple grow from a cutting I planted myself. Olivia said I'd be bankrupt in a year. Instead, I've got something way more valuable: peace, purpose, and a business that's actually mine. Turns out, success doesn't always come in shiny packages. Sometimes it shows up in dirty hands, loyal teammates, and the smell of fresh soil. And honestly, that's more than enough.